All right, what's good, YouTube? It's your boy, You Savvy Reacts. We're going to be reacting to Is YouTube Harder Than 9 to 5 by KD. All right. Hope I said that right. I know you're probably like, who the hell is this dude? But I have, this is my second channel. My main channel has over 12,000 subscribers in a little under like 8 months. So I feel like I'm qualified to talk about it. So we're going to get right into the video. Let's get right to this shit, man.
Here we go again.
YouTubers just sit inside, fiddling their worm in front of a mic and camera all day and make millions, whereas 9-to-5 workers are slaves who waste their lives inside of a cubicle. I mean, they're not entirely wrong. However, this question is much deeper than the number of hours you work or the softness of one's hands. In fact, according to 3 of the most influential psychological studies in organizational psychology, the hardest part of a job isn't the job itself, but the effect that stress of a job brings to a worker. But what is stress? Let me explain. First, we have to look at who is doing the work. This is the person-environment fit theory. It suggests that stress doesn't come from the job itself, but from the friction between your personality and your surroundings. Essentially, workers perform best and feel the least amount of stress when their individual needs, values, and skills align with the environmental characteristics of the job they work in. According to the study, those in 9-to-5 jobs are most commonly affected by supplementary misfit, which is when the demands of a certain job do not align with a person's values or personality traits. For example, if an introvert is forced into high-stakes sales, where one bad quarter could be the difference between being employed and being KD. This misfit of character traits would cause an overexpenditure of emotional labor to bring themselves up to the level that they need to achieve their targets, increasing the emotional load on the worker day to day and their feelings of stress as a result. This can also bring the insecurity of complementary misfit, in which the more replaceable and under threat an employee feels, the more stress they feel under to perform. In other words,
No, that's true. Like, you gotta think about it. A lot of people work jobs they don't like. Like, a lot of us aren't really in the career field we want to be in. A lot of us go to college expecting to get a degree, and then you still can't find a job in your career field. So you have to work a job that you may not like just because it pays the bills. Like even with the job I work now, uh, there's so many people who are like, man, I hate this job, but they're still there, right? And they've been there for 10 plus years. Talking about they hate this job. It's the money, right? At the end, the money's good enough, depending on the industry, they'll stay there for years, then stay stuck. So yeah, I think, and then that builds up resentment in people. If they work a job that really isn't aligned with their personality, like if you're an introvert and you work with a lot of people, that's gonna be stressful. That's gonna be like, you're going to work, you're probably dreading it because you like, damn, I gotta talk to people who I don't really want to talk to. I gotta talk to this manager who I don't really like, but it's my manager, so I gotta talk to them. That could be kind of stressful, right? And then especially if you work customer facing jobs, right? Where you gotta talk to a bunch of different customers, right? Because me as an introvert, that was always like a little bit annoying and stressful because you didn't ever knew how people were gonna react that day. Y'all know how Karens can be, and people just sometimes have a bad attitude in service businesses. If you have been a server or cashier, I've done all those jobs, right? So most of us work jobs we don't even like for money. So yeah, I could understand that part. So I think he's gonna get into YouTube, but let's see what he's gonna say.
massive cortisol spike. However, the 9-to-5 does have a catch, which is separation. While this can make an employee feel caged, it can also bring a sense of security for many, in which once you punched out, your time is more or less yours. The same can't be said for the YouTuber who, unlike 9-to-5ers who are burdened with external compliance, the YouTuber's fit in this model is an internal identity struggle. But why? Well, it all starts with the algorithm. The YouTube algorithm is a constantly moving and unpredictable target, judging millions of videos against each other to bring the content that you, the viewer, will find the most interesting. Essentially, the algorithm is the boss constantly evaluating the performance of your uploads, and the moment your content falls out of alignment with what the audience finds interesting, no HR meeting, no warning, you're fired! The algorithm doesn't hesitate to make room for more interesting content. This can cause a YouTuber to tweak their individual style to match the environment for higher views. However, this can also lead to a feeling of pressure to conform to a certain identity in order to get more views. That friction creates a constant low-level cortisol spike for the creator that leaves them feeling unfulfilled and out of place within their own job. And because you are the brand, this identity crisis is something you can never clock out of, recharge, and come back to. But
man, this is the hardest part about it because like I said, on my second channel, not this one. This one has grown pretty quickly too. Uh, Second channel, I have over 12,000 subscribers, and it's still growing. And I've been doing it for 8 months on my second channel. Um, it's Juice Savvy for anybody who cares. But if you actually go over there, you gotta actually watch my videos. The last time I'm gonna plug this channel on here. It it's constant work. Whereas like a job, once you clock out, you're done. Right? You know you're done. You don't have to think about the job anymore if you don't want to. YouTube, it's like you constantly have to think about ideas, being creative, depending on what your channel is. You know, topics, scripts, editing. There's a lot that goes into it. Some people get big enough and get fortunate enough to be big enough to pay other people to, outsource and make content and editing for them and thumbnails. There's a lot that goes into it. But if you're doing it all yourself, that's a lot to manage. So you're running yourself like a business. Whereas a job, you're just an employee. You're clocking in. You know what you're doing that day for the most part. You're there to do a task or a handful of tasks, and that's it. You're done. YouTube, it's never ending. There's there's so many things that go into YouTube. There's updates. There's changes. There's things you have to be aware of. Content style, appealing to your audience. There's a lot. So there's different challenges, right? But I would just say the one thing you can't argue with is that as a YouTuber, you constantly are working for the most part. Like there really is no days off. If you're not posting videos, you're checking your analytics. You're seeing how videos perform. You're looking at watch time. So it's like you're also a business analyst at the same time. You know. So you're a creator and you're an analyst. You're looking at your data. It's like looking at charts. Like if you're a trader, if you trade stocks, for example, right? Looking at data. So there's a lot that goes into it mentally, right? And then you have to be creative on top of that. So, like I said, both has their challenges, but as a YouTuber, you really can never turn it off. With a job, you can.
Even if you fit your role perfectly, there's a lot more that can influence the difficulty of your job. And this brings us to the job demand control model, represented by this matrix right here. This model highlights that stress increases when the demand of a job exceeds the amount of control a worker has over it. So when a person has a passive job, one that fits the low control, low demand quadrant, it can lead to stress cultivated through boredom, stagnation, and an atrophy of high value skills that can leave an employee feeling trapped, purposeless, and expendable. An active job, on the contrary, is the holy grail in this model, creating an environment for the worker in which their skills are challenged in a manner that allows them to express themselves freely through their work, lowering stress and cortisol spikes. Now, most 9-to-5s exist in the high strain quadrants, in which the mental, physical, and or intellectual efforts of the job are pretty high. However, this next point is interesting. The amount of control one has over the work they do can either minimize or exacerbate the negative feelings a worker has toward their job. For example, making burgers and taking orders at McDonald's isn't necessarily a demanding task in and of itself. However, when it comes to the physical and emotional burden of dealing with angry customers or keeping up with a busy workload, the environment created by these uncontrollable factors raises the demand of the job significantly.
And that's what I was talking about earlier. Like especially if you're an introvert and you don't really like to really talk to people, that added stress can be a little bit of it's an unknown. It's a big unknown. You don't know how someone's gonna come in someday and feel. Like I've just had people give me attitudes for no reason in service businesses when I was doing that, right? Like I said, I've been a cashier. I have had a lot of different jobs. The restaurant industry, you run into all types of people, and you're especially drunk people. Like if your restaurant you work in has a bar, so yeah, I'm not gonna yap about that. But yeah, other people you can't control that. So like one thing I always had to learn is like, okay, don't take it personal. Don't take that stuff personally because you can't control it. So it's not in your control. I know a lot of us probably feel upset if a customer yelled at us for something. But a lot of times, bro, that's something they got going on. People are mad, bro. People are angry. People are miserable out here. All right, you gotta understand that people are not happy. So yeah, it takes one little somebody messes up your order, they order, and it wasn't even your fault. Now they're taking it out on you. So yeah, yeah, I can't do that no more. I don't like for that reason. I don't like doing service businesses, cashiers, restaurant. No, thank you. Mm-mm. I'd rather not talk to people. I work by myself.
Can lead to higher levels of stress. On the other hand, a software developer might feel intellectually burdened by the difficulty of creating a $1 million app for their company, but the creative freedom that they have over their work can increase the positive feelings they have about their job. But what about content creation? Well, you may think that because content creators have total creative freedom over what they put out, this should be a straightforward answer, right? Well, not exactly. See, a YouTuber may be able to post whatever they want, but as you said earlier, that doesn't necessarily mean it will do well, even for the largest creators on the platform. And when you do something that the algorithm doesn't like, it pushes your content out to make room for a creator who creates more interesting content. Suddenly, you aren't dealing with angry customers or your bitchy boss, Steve, but rather hinging the success of your channel on an autonomous AI model that could shadow ban or demonetize you in an instant. Now, if you're in a niche that you like and feel passionate about, much like a job, this can very easily be considered an active job. However, how many channels could this be the case for? 0.54%, maybe even less. So we've looked at the person and the power dynamics behind stress at work, but psychology shows that humans can endure almost anything if there's a perceived benefit at the end of it. But what happens if that work feels meaningless? This feeling describes the effort-reward balance, when perceived efforts aren't rewarded to the level the workers feel they should. When you analyze stress through this lens, you're looking at whether the payoff is worth the pain. But here's the catch. Johannes Segrist, the creator of this model, identified a personality pattern called overcommitment. This trait is a personal coping mechanism in which a person either views their job as a means to an end, for instance, working a part-time job, or the worker has an internal drive to work harder than necessary due to an internal need for approval or control, even when the perceived rewards are low.
Because if I lose my job, I have nothing!
In other words, overcommitment is a spectrum of choice that puts a worker at a higher risk for depression and poor mental health. For the overcommitted 9-to-5er, stress may be high, but has a safety net. Because the rewards are contractual and guaranteed, the stakes are contained. And although the 9-to-5 might cap your ceiling, leaving a worker feeling increasingly caged the harder they overcommit, the floor is at least there to catch you. But there is a psychological cost to that safety: resentment. Because a 9-to-5 is a fixed contract, any effort you give beyond the job description is essentially a donation to your
Pretty much, bro. You're pretty much giving them free money. You know, you're giving them free money. The more you do beyond your job description. And for some of you, like, that's something you should do. And what I mean by that is, if you're in your career, maybe you should go a little bit above and beyond, right? I'd argue, bro, if you wanted to be a YouTuber, you have to have a job and do YouTube until the YouTube takes off. And even then some, keep the job just to secure that bag, right? If you're really a hustler, you know, nothing wrong with doing both. It takes work. That's what I've done. That's how I grew my other channel as much as I did, because I had a job, I had income to secure me. I had the job as security. I knew I had that job. I knew I could fall back on it if the YouTube didn't work. YouTube was working for me and I still have my job, but I'm at the point now where I'm trying to have two channels, right? I'm trying to have both these channels making money for me. And now my income has tripled or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm on right now. So yeah, that's but you know, that's how it has to look if you want to do YouTube, because you can't just jump into YouTube thinking, oh, I'm gonna be making this type of money consistently. Bro, YouTube is so up and down, it's not guaranteed. It's hard work. It's not guaranteed. That's why people can grow comfortable in jobs, right? Then they grow to resent their jobs because they're trading all their time for money, and they realize they never had no time for nothing, right? So being a YouTuber isn't for everybody. Having a job isn't for everybody, right? It's all about what you want to do. Okay. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
employer. And Segrist argues that when your extra effort isn't met with a form of reciprocity, like a promotion or even just a thank you, it creates a sense of systemic injustice. Like, you did all that work, you're tired, you're bitter, and you're just watching the company profit off the very energy that is burning you out, without any type of reward. But content creation, it's a career of massive imbalance, and the rewards are never guaranteed.
Yeah,
Creating, probably the biggest stressor for a majority of creators and any other self-employed profession.
And you have to think about it like this, bro. the best way, and this is what something I learned from like a lot of other creators that I watch, especially DDG. I learned a lot from DDG. Consistency, consistency, consistency. He rarely ever takes breaks. That is literally how this shit goes. If he does take a break, he's letting his fans know, and then he's posting somewhere else. Like he's constantly working. Like you gotta pay attention. Like if you look at DDG now, bro, he's been live streaming on Twitch and YouTube. And he's been posting clips. I'm sure he has a team that helps him, but that's how it has to look. Like you have to post on multiple platforms. You can't rely on one platform or one channel if you're talking about just YouTube, right? Make 2 or 3 channels. Make a spam channel where you could post content 4 to 5 times a day if you want, right? Start a Twitch and then post your clips from Twitch onto your live channel on YouTube, you know? That's how it, and it has to be like a daily thing if you really want to make it your full thing, you know, full-time thing. But consistency outweighs like consistency, bro. That will beat any algorithm change, any you'll outlast so many other people because you're just more consistent than them. People see you more often in the algorithm. All right.
Gambler's stress in contrast to the 9 to 5 stress of
Telling y'all.
stagnation. When you're on YouTube, you could work 24/7, and if the algorithm doesn't deem your videos interesting, it won't reward you accordingly. This, according to the model, can lead to lower motivation to work, lower feelings of job security, and in turn, higher levels of stress. So with all this information in mind, what's the verdict? Which is actually harder? Well, the truth is that the same person can thrive in one job, but feel like hell on earth in the other. So in other words, you got clickbaited! But really you didn't, because I believe that this is the definitive answer, and the reason most people can only answer this question anecdotally. What you deem as harder or more stressful depends entirely on your individual value, and not just the comparison of flipping burgers versus sitting at home all day fiddling your worm. If you value autonomy and an infinite growth ceiling, the 9 to 5 will feel like a cage in which the lack of control will be your primary source of stress. If you value security and psychological boundaries, the creator's life will feel like a nightmare. The lack of a clock out time and the volatile rewards will burn you out in months. So all in all, what we deem as hard isn't really competition, it's a choice of trade-offs. The 9 to 5 trades your freedom for security, while content creation trades your security for freedom and control of what you do and when you do it. Doing both will cost you something, but the question isn't which is easier, but rather which trade are you willing to sign. And as always, thank you for watching, and always remember.
Yeah, bro. Which they're both hard paths. Which path do you want to choose? Do you want security or do you want comfort? Because honestly, how I see it, a job brings you both. You're comfortable at a job and you have a sense of security, but there's a ceiling. You can't grow that much. You're locked into making this amount of money pretty much for the rest of your life. You'll get some raises, but your lifestyle won't really be able to change, right? That's not okay for me. Like that sounds like a nightmare to me, right? If we're talking about a nightmare. But to someone else, that is like, oh, that's great. Like, bro, if I can make I'm like if I make an 80K a year and then I can kind of grow, that's cool with me. Like some people like that's okay for them. They can take care of their family, their kids, if they know they're making this money, that's okay for them. For me, that's not okay, right? I'm okay with working a job until I get that to the point where I can take off. But the thing is with YouTube, there's a higher growth curve. Like you could go from making $200 one month to $2,000 the next month. It really looks like that, bro. Like the growth curve for YouTube is way higher. So that's why YouTubers get paid the money they get paid. I mean, like a lot of YouTubers get paid typically like $10 per 1,000 views. Think about that. 1,000 views on YouTube is not hard to get. If you post 3 videos a day, say each video gets 500 views. That's 1,500 views a day. Times that by what, 7 days? That's like 13,000 views. What's that? 100? Maybe like call it like a little under $100. for 13,000 views, 13,000. If you get $10, like I'm telling y'all, bro, it's call it 100. Call it, you get 90 to $100 for that. That's nuts. So yeah, man, and you know your RPM is gonna change every video. There's a lot that goes into it that you guys are gonna have to look up. But yeah, that's why YouTube is different. The pay is different. So yeah, man. That's it for the video. Hope y'all found this interesting. Your boy Too Savvy Reacts. We out for here, man. Peace.